Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to the committee of the whole meeting this morning. Nice to see everybody here in the gathering on virtual. We appreciate that. We don't have a real long agenda, but we have some things to discuss this morning. We will have a public comment at the end of the meeting. If everyone wants to address the board after the meeting is over. And again, we appreciate you all being here on virtual too. We'll start with a roll call from Madam Clerk Fenny.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Commissioner Goodchild,
Here.
Commissioner Bardwell,
Here.
Commissioner Vaughn,
Here.
Commissioner Luke,
Here.
Commissioner Cook.
Here.
Thank you. You have a forum. You may proceed.
Thank you. Anything to add to the new business this morning? Anything to add to this morning? I have nothing this morning too. We'll start with new business. The Sheboygan Creek Intercounty Drain Bonds Series 2025.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Drain Commissioner. I believe you guys were given a resolution in your packet.
Thank you.
What I'm giving you guys right now is I try to blow it up so you can see it. So it's a district map of the drain that we are going to be talking about this morning.
Thank you.
So I'm here today this morning for a resolution for bond funding. It's an inter-county drain with Saginaw County and Bay. The drain is, to give you a little bit of history here, this drain is approximately 16 miles long. It has a watershed of acreage of about 77,000 acres. To break down the percentages accordingly, Saginaw approximately 71%, Tuscola 24%, and Bay just over 4%. Back in 2019, we received a petition on this project for maintenance. Throughout the course of the years, we've been working with the engineers and came up with a project plan. We have a project plan in place. We do have a contractor already selected to move forward. Now we need the money to complete the project. We're looking at a fund borrowing of approximately 4.2 million spread accordingly to, obviously, to the county and to the district. The district will be assessed their percentages accordingly against acreage to approximately 10-year assessment. This district is within Commissioner Lutz and Commissioner Cook's district. This is where this drain falls. With this resolution for the full faith and credit will ensure us to get the best interest rate that we possibly can. Saginaw County is doing the same. They received their resolution. Bay County is actually going to the commissioners meeting as well. Without this, we do jeopardize not getting the best interest rate we possibly can, but with this, I know we can. So at this point, this is what I'm looking for, is for the board to pass this resolution so we can move forward with this project. Is there any questions?
So this would be, you get with the bond council and all,
Yes.
and
Yep.
and then the people inside this district would be assessed.
Correct. Correct. And we're looking at approximately about a 10-year assessment for the district. It's to keep the cost down to a minimum per year. There is always the option for anybody within the district to prepay to avoid any interest. We will be having a data review of apportionments coming up here on June 24th. So the district has an opportunity to come review their assessments and decide if they would like to prepay or to spread it over their winter tax bill.
Mr. Chair.
Has Saginaw commissioners and Bay County, have they met yet? Did you say?
Saginaw has already met last week, and I'm not exactly sure when Bay meets, but I know that Saginaw only meets once a month, and they already met and passed their resolution last week. Bay County, I can't confirm what their date was.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Saginaw holds the highest percentage, so I was waiting for Saginaw to go get theirs
Right.
through done first.
Right.
But if you look at the drainage district map, the yellow line is the actual drain itself.
So our portion would be 4.2 million, our portion?
No, that is the whole
That's the
project
entire-
for us. Yes,
Okay.
we would be the 24.36% of that.
Okay.
So
our
Tuscola
bond would
County's
be
portion is
24.
about 988.
Okay.
Yes.
Question, who's the bond attorney?
We are dealing with Budzinski's and Laura Bassett. I can't think of what company she's from.
Previously,
Yes. Yes, they've done pretty much all drain. That's all they do is drain work. Yes. This falls right in the lines. We did one, resolution for Murphy Lake not too long ago. The Smith drain, same project. I believe you were both at Fargo and Vaughn were both there when we did those two. I can't speak for the other commissioners.
No question.
Probably need a motion on that.
Correct. We need to go through the roll call vote.
Okay,
Motion
motion.
on first day.
I don't need-
Any more questions for Dan Fisher?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to number 2. Dispatch annual report.
I'll give my-
Down there.
Good morning.
Trust that you received all the report in your packets.
That'll be for the next topic.
Yeah. That'll be the next item on the agenda. Just real briefly, this is our annual report. You can see on page 6, I highlighted our call trend. We are back up a little over 10,000 calls just from last year. Real basics, pages 7 and 8 break those down as to types of things that we're seeing here in the county, as well as page 9, breaks down the activity for each agency within Tuscola County. It's pretty basic. Follow the bookmark or the trend of every previous annual report. We did regain some devices compared to last year, or in 23. We're up to 44,443 devices per month that we collect at $2.03 on. That's up from 33,900 the previous year. Surcharge amount received this year on page 11 is just over $1 million. It's $1,082,631. Page 12, I did a quick snapshot of just revenues versus expenses and a fund balance total. We started 2024 with $675,287 in fund balance. We used just over $300,000 in fund balance to carry over from 23 to 24. On page 13 is a 10-year budgetary trend. We actually see in 2019 when we crossed our expenses with our revenues. Our revenues have been on a slow decline and the expenses have been on an increase, obviously. But on this trend line report, it shows 2019 was our year that we crossed over. And then real quickly on pages 15 and 16 is the budget reports. Going back from 2018 to 24. Page 17, we see a breakdown of our wages, overtime, and shift premium. From 2018 to 2024, we saw nearly a 22.5% increase in those items. And then a lot of questions that I do receive when I go out to the public is, how is 911 ran? How is it organized? So I decided to include on pages 18 and 19, the Tuscola County 911 organizational chart showing the authority board, myself, and the advisory committee, the technical advisory committee, or the TAC. And then page 19 is the breakdown of the authority board, which consists of a chairman from the fire department this year, as well as a vice chair from Michigan State Police, our post commander, and an EMS representative, and so forth. On page 20 is just a quick breakdown of how our TAC committee is assembled, representing each discipline within Tuscola County. And then pages 21 through the rest are just some highlights of our team and their successes that they've had in 2024. I do have a quick pamphlet that is a breakdown or a snapshot of the annual report. I find it helpful. Not that the annual report is tough to guide through, but I think all of us want to see. And you found we have any questions?
Chairman?
Yeah.
This is just the first time going through, maybe second since I've scanned it once before. John, it appears, just looking at the budget snapshot, it ends at 24. Unless I missed a page, there's not any projections for 25, 26. But you're in declining fund balance. With revenues, holding their own, so to speak, but declining, but expenses increasing. What are we missing here?
Well, we face,
You got 675,000 in the fund balance in 2024. Where are you at today?
I believe, well, because we do modified accruals, I can't give you a 100% answer until, unfortunately, about this time next year. Because,
Modified accrual.
yes.
Versus full accrual.
So,
Okay.
and that's where some of the, after speaking with Erica, it seems as though that may have been a misunderstanding of our fund balances in the past of you got, 1.2 million or 1 million in your fund balance, but that's what we started the year with. So when we have that cross of expenses going over our revenue, then at the end of the year, that comes off. So if you see in 2023, we started with 969,000.
What
and
page
we-
you on?
Yeah, I'm sorry,
15.
page 12. 12 is what I'm looking at.
Oh,
Just-
oh,
excuse me,
okay.
sorry, you're right.
No.
Oh, no, 12.
Well,
12 is what I'm looking at on the fund balance column.
969.
Yes. So we ended 2023 or started 2024 at 675,000. So we started 24 at that 625, 277. If we see an increase in health insurance again, or something out of the normal, something breaks, replacement costs that we didn't budget for, we can at least expect another $280,000 to $300,000 loss, just like we did last year.
Where's your break even point?
We're
Is it 0? I mean, you're at 675 and modified, that's what we're going to count for transfer outs.
if we maintain status quo, and again, nothing unexpected happens, just status quo business as we are today, we anticipate being zero balance mid 2026. If I want to get more precise, I would take a swing at August.
So next year.
Yes.
And that plan's forthcoming, right?
That's the next topic.
I saw that. No further questions.
What else have any questions for Don on his report? I know. Okay.
CA that.
Yeah, put that up file. Okay. Let's move on down to number 3 then. The special election discussion. Don Morris.
Yes, commissioners, members of my authority board have asked me to present one more time in efforts to have an open discussion about the situation of the financial crisis that we do face at 911. Part of it is, when it comes to budget year, I can budget my expenses operationally. Those are pretty consistent. The things that I can't budget for are healthcare cost increases, which caught everybody off guard last year. Seeing nearly $150,000 increase just for dispatch alone. So that was pretty significant. So obviously, fingers crossed, we don't cross that. But I was wondering, how do I present this differently than I've presented in the past? How do I express the importance of financial stability within 911, not only for the employees, but also the citizens of Tuscola County? And, I don't know what information you folks are looking for, so I decided to take a little trip explaining where we began and where we are currently and where we really need to go. Next slide, please. So where we have been in the past was dispatch itself was not a recognized special class of employee, or they were always recognized as clerical, to the point that road patrol officers without any special training could go into dispatch, which was in the basement of the sheriff's office, and work shifts. They could either sign up for overtime to do it, or they could be pulled in off the road if something emergent happened with one of the employees, and they would fill in. Times have changed drastically. For example, in the basement of the sheriff's office, they used to take calls and write them, and I could have brought you the slips. We still use them in case of an emergency and we lose internet connection. Doesn't happen, but everything today is cloud-based. We still maintain that as an emergency backup system, but that's how things were done. They were handwritten. Officers had to change their VHF channels according to which tower they were at in which section of the county. We're beyond that. We're on a statewide 800 megahertz system. They saw the differences that was needed. I don't have any history as to why we separated or what premised that, but I'm going to suspect it was this formation of the State 911 Committee and the finances thereof. So in 1997, dispatch was building their own office. They separated from the sheriff's office. In 1998, they moved into the current building that we are in. Staffing in 1997 was 8 dispatchers, 2 supervisors, and 1 director. They did at one point in time have part-time to help with that, but we can't find any motions or minutes to where those part-time positions were left. When did we leave those? Okay, that structure is still the same today, just we have changed to having a deputy director instead of 2 supervisors. The roles have changed, the requirements have changed, the licensures have changed, making it extremely difficult. And as we can see, the world events have also changed, shaping public safety roles and expectations. And as dispatch, we've had to change. 911 centers, I just came back from a conference last week and we discussed specifically in depth how 911 plays a role in an active assailant type situation, whether it be a hate crime, terrorism, or just a mass casualty incident, which we've discussed at length before the board before. How many patients does it take to overwhelm our current system within Tuscola County? Simply put, it would just be a van full of kids or a school bus or a church group that would overwhelm our system. So those are things that we need to look at. And as we've discussed before, the state puts in requirements or imposes requirements for us to meet that are often left unfunded. And then it's up to me as a director to find the funding and to find the solutions to meet both the state and federal requirements, but also the local needs and guidelines. Next slide, please. Here, I want to talk about the evolution a little bit more. Again, world events have changed and shaped public safety roles. Law enforcement officers have had to learn more tactical approaches, right? This isn't the type, policing in 1975 is drastically different than it is in 2025. They got to, unfortunately, think more like a military unit with a 3 or 4 man team when they go into some of these situations. With that, all of our EMS agencies, which we train with at least twice a year or try to, they've had to become aware of our tactics our as in police. They've had to become accustomed to wearing body armor. They've had to become accustomed to learning threat assessment and health assessment, as well as fire departments. Fire departments have also had to work with law enforcement and EMS. They're also armed with helmets and tactical vests, thanks to our emergency manager. And this is a trend throughout the United States. This isn't us overreaching or overreacting. This is merely in preparation for what if. Along with those things, officers have had to change also because they may have had to take on extra roles, not in Tuscola County, but some agencies have asked officers to become fire officers, firemen, or medical first responders, which we do see here in Carroll City. Terrorism, hazmat, mental health, drug use, drug development have all forced first responders to become experts in everything. Whether it be a counselor, a marriage counselor, or parents that refuse to parent or don't know how to parent, they call 911. My child won't get out of bed to go to school. That's a frequent call, unfortunately. How do we manage that? It's not a police matter. That's something that we would love to say. But the fact of the matter is they have a duty to respond. They have an expectation to respond. So we're adapting to that. And I'll get to how that correlates to 911. Taking of all those examples I've given you, dispatchers themselves have had to learn everything that we've talked about, whereas they've had to learn the new changes in law enforcement. They've had to learn the new changes in the EMS and fire. And working with our agencies like the medical director, we change things. I don't want to say constantly, but we change them in conformance with our local areas and needs. And the dispatchers, unfortunately, don't have the luxury of seeing it firsthand. So it's all in their mind. They have to interpret what they're learning and apply it. Leading to my job that I have to almost effortlessly, or I'll say that. I put a lot of effort into seamlessly working with all first responders, police, fire, EMS, Coast Guard. That's been added the last 2 years. I've extended to them. We've worked with government officials. We've worked with school officials with our school safety initiatives. We're working with emergency managers across different counties because Tuscola County only has one. So when Steve is able to take a vacation, I have to have those relationships already in place with my neighboring departments such as Bay County or Saginaw County. And Saginaw County has done very well working with me. They extend an offer every time Steve takes a vacation. So that's great. But again, things are all changing and evolving. Next, please. So where are we now? We are currently in a position where dispatchers have to know everything at any time and be 100% right 100% of the time. Now we're given the information from a caller and we translate that into what they need based upon the information given. Being a former officer, I can attest to you, nothing is more frustrating than getting on the scene and finding out it's nothing at all what was reported. Is that the dispatcher's fault or the caller's fault? Well, it sometimes gets lost in translation, but those things happen, and it's incredibly hard to meet those standards, but my team meets them every day. They work for this. Dispatch can become a opportunity or a job, a career, a profession where you must know technology. You must be able to work with technology. You must be able to there we go. You must be able to handle and manage the technology while using your speaking ability and your listening abilities. It is multitasking to the nth degree. Not everyone can do it. Not everyone is prepared to do it. But nevertheless, people are still my greatest asset. Without my people, 911 doesn't exist. And that's another topic I'll get into in just a little bit. No matter how good my technology is, no matter how good my services for technology is, it's the people that operate the technology that I need. So although my computers, radios, and phones must be above the minimum standard, so too shall be my people. Because without those, you're only going to meet the minimum success, in my opinion. And I can't afford that when lives are at stake. Every dispatcher is trained and licensed to provide pre-hospital medical care. Not every dispatch center does that. We have worked very closely, very strictly in maintaining our ability to assist our citizens when they call with anything from a toothache to childbirth or CPR. I've been on the other end as an officer, helping people with amputations and childbirths. So I know the importance of the instructions that my dispatchers are able to give, and I appreciate those. And for 2 years in a row, I cannot say enough. You get me talking about 911, I will take all day. You get to talk to me about my team, I'll talk 2 days. I cannot tell you how proud I am that for 2 years in a row, my team at dispatch out on the Hill has led the state in survivability statistics. We are up to 13.9%, up from 13% last year. CPR, although it's great, it's not like in the TV, it's not like in the movies where it's a success rate of 100%. We are striving and we've made changes, including up to our officers and to our fire departments, that anytime that there's a full arrest, I've talked about this before, we deploy the nearest officer and the nearest fire department. And you can see statistically a tangible benefit. There are 13.9% better chances for you to survive today than there was yesterday or the day before. Next slide, please. Technology is not only required, but it's expected. Recently, my dispatchers took a call about some activity where there was some nefarious happenings on the internet, and they wanted to send a picture. 3 years ago, that wouldn't even have been an option. You couldn't have sent that picture to dispatch, but now today we have that capability. And it's sometimes all this technology, I think in the past, when we were able to build up that said fund balance, we neglected other areas of business. And it comes totally at the expense of the employees. We don't update their equipment or their computer improvements. And I think IT can attest to the great strides we've made out there to ensure that, you know, they have the best of the best, not because we're showboating, but because it's what's needed. The county is facing an end-of-life decision for the radios that we used from Motorola, and we have no funding source or opinion in sight. We have 14 fire departments, 13 police departments, and no one is trying to figure out how to replace these $9,000 handheld radios and a $6,000 radio in the vehicles. And what do we do when that gets shut off? When Motorola no longer services that? What do we do when, and I know this is a topic that we don't like talking about, what do we do when the state imposed what do we do when the state imposed encryption? Thank you, Steve. Encryption is here. We said we'll never make that change because it's unfunded. The state is not funding it, period. We said, well, the state of Michigan can't afford to make that move. It'll never happen. We'll never meet the deadline. 2 weeks ago, the state of Michigan announced that they have an event channel that we can ask for should something happen that's totally encrypted. And there's 26 channels on that event channel. What does that mean? It means the state is already moving to make encryption real and possible. We have to look to the future, and I don't know what discussions we need to have, when we need to have them, but I can tell you that it's going to be, as in 2023, when I was looking at it, it's going to be probably near a $2 million project to get these radios for the county. In the past, dispatch has been the fiduciary for that. And simply, we're trying to keep our doors open. So again, that's going to be a great discussion amongst the powers to be to facilitate that action. But anyway, the evolving roles of the dispatcher has been their training. Training is paramount. It used to be once you did your 16 weeks of training, you were done. You were blessed, go forth and conquer and save lives. We are now to the fact that we have to maintain our training weekly. We assign monthly training requirements, classes that we send them to online, kind of in-person training, so really a thing fast. But when they're not taking an active call, they're almost all training. It's definitely a different situation today. Complex and high-stress situations while trying to manage all those resources and technology while not violating rules, policies, or laws. The stress of the job leads to burnout, which leads to resignation and impacts the services we can provide. I just hired, with your permission, 2 new people to become new dispatchers. One started last week, one starts next week, and just in time, I received another resignation. The dilemma I'm in is I'm down to 7 dispatchers. I'm training 2 that won't be ready to be out on their own for at least 4 months. And with the staffing that I have, I do not have the capability to train 3 at a time. 2 is extremely difficult and requires even the most professionalism from my communications training officers. It puts us in a conundrum as we're heading into vacation season. My dispatchers are to the point where they're working mandated overtime. The shortness of dispatchers or peers have led to them maybe not be able to use their earned PTO time due to staffing levels. But with these open positions, I've seen it, I've heard it. My staff comes to me, it's leading to personal strife. It leads to issues in marriages and family life. It adds stress and more burnout. Emotional well-being has been the topic in 911 for several years. This conference last week was no different. They hammered home on peer support. They hammered home on EPAs. What are we doing to protect these people? Because it's quick to recognize the responders and the heroes out on the front line. But almost everyone forgets those that are back behind, actually running coordination and getting resources to where they need to be needed. The statistic they gave as of Thursday of last week was 17 to 20%, 26% of all dispatchers experienced long-lasting PTSD, almost the highest of any discipline in the first responder business. My staff has seen a supervisor position removed from dispatch. They've seen more mandated overtime. They see low pay and a job that makes it difficult for them to use their earned time off due to the staffing levels. These are the things that I face, along with the public requirements, the public expectations, my collaborations with other agencies. Finding applicants and capable applicants are 2 completely different things. We had scheduled 12 interviews and only 4 showed up. Out of those 4, we realized that we needed to do simple things that I have never seen done before in a job interview. We had to ask them, "You alphabetize this for me?" Something that was taught common knowledge when we were in school is not anymore. And it wasn't meant to be embarrassing to the individual interviewing for the position. It was, this is the minimums that I need you to do. Because managing everything else is, if you can't do the basics, I can't even trust you with this stuff. And there were some that had difficulties alphabetizing. Next, please. So where do we need to go? How do we fix this? Well, in my opinion, I need financial and personnel security. And this is, again, what I've heard from my staff. My staff needs to see stability and equality amongst the departments here in Tuscola County. Because as much as we try to keep it the same, we're not. The funding model for dispatch has not changed since 1997. Which has obviously led us to here, an alarming position that we find ourselves in. And it's not one that our neighbors haven't experienced themselves either. At some point, everyone, I believe, meets this. If funding models do not change, we will see a financial collapse in mid-2026. That's a tough one to admit. I don't know of any other department that has talked about it publicly as much as I have. But it's scary to me. It's scary when I go back to my team and look them in the eye and say, a year from now, ladies and gentlemen, we may not have a job. And it's out of my control. Dispatch currently is a dead-end job. And this is the things, again, that I hear. It's a dead-end job. I have no chance of improving myself. I have no chance of promotion. I got low pay, and every little few months, we get a resignation. Why do I want to stay here? When I came into dispatch, I told them my job is to train you up to be the best that you can be and be hired anywhere. My hope is that you never want to leave. I'm believing that I am making myself good on the first part of that statement. The second one, I don't have control over, but you can see the path that we're on currently. As personnel costs continue to rise, so does technology and software licenses. I look back to when Ian was very instrumental in helping us get out of the Central Square contract, saving us nearly $400,000 over the course of 3 years. Look at our fund balance that I just presented to you at the start of the year, 695,000, I believe it was. And you take off another 400,000 of that because of a poor product that we entered into contract with. We would be essentially shutting doors this year if we stayed on course with that. Security and safety expectations are growing. We're going to discuss on a very soon topic a use of the courthouse lawn this upcoming weekend. Things are going on around the town all the time, and our expectations are to keep them safe when they attend those events. And I'm sure, again, our CIO can attest to cybersecurity. It's a daily battle to maintain the integrity of our systems and the data that we collect. And again, reverting back to our previous CAD, it was a class action lawsuit that led me to believe we need to start investigating and looking at our contracts. So again, Ian was instrumental in helping us prevent that and get out of that contract. Next slide, please. Data trends show our revenue and expense threshold was crossed in 2019. That's in your annual report. You can see the graph when we crossed that line, when our expenses became more than the revenue that we were seeking. In the last 3 years, revenue was not able to cover our expenses. Nearly $486,000 was used from the fund balance to pay for operations. So when you look at the surcharge that we collect, I can either pay all my staff and ignore operations, or pay for operationals of 911 and ignore my staff. And somewhere in the middle, we have to find a balance to pay everyone and look at what operations are we ceasing to have. That's the honest truth. Of that 486,000, 150,000 of it was from the healthcare benefit increase that we saw last year. If this business model doesn't change, we will deplete the remaining fund balance by this time next year. Next slide, please. So, gentlemen, we can talk about the millage again, or a special millage, a special election rather. And I will say this is the meat and potatoes I think that you guys want to hear. If we'll choose to have a special election this November, our deadline to file for that special election is August 12th, which is quickly approaching. So, we can discuss what is appropriate for a millage amount. I don't know if this is the time to discuss that. I do have a data spreadsheet that will show you with formulas already built into it. Thanks to Angie Daniels and Carrie Tabar for building that for me to show what it would cost every homeowner if we asked for this millage. This is what it would cost for this amount of value of your home. But the fact of the matter is, gentlemen, you have the ability to change direction and change the course of 911. I have made all the recommendations I can do over the last 14 months. And this quick presentation, I leave with you, and I would be excited to work with you as we move forward. Now come the questions.
In the absence of the silence we have here, I have questions, Chairman, if you
Yeah, go
want
ahead.
to proceed. When I asked for a break-even point, it probably wasn't the right terminology, but in my mind, it was, I'm looking at your 2024, I'm looking at longevity and some call-up questions that are really concerning. You projected in 2024, $1.2 million in revenue and $1.5 million in expenses with a 675 at the end. No one knows that because the transfers out don't take place until much later.
Correct.
Do you have any sense of how you're tracking in terms of that 675? I mean, above that, or if you end up below that, this is 6 months in.
And that's where it's difficult, because some of these things we're pulling from the fund balance until that revenue comes in. And then when that revenue comes in, it's transferred back to the fund balance. But I want to believe when Erica and I met, it was around 475,000, 465,000.
Just an estimating it continuing to decline, which leads to this question. Even though the deadline is August 12th, let's say you created a millage and set amount. When would you, if that millage were to be placed on the public, when would you actually receive money from that millage?
Yes, that's a question I asked Ms. Daniels, and she informed me it would be on the December winter taxes. So we would see the first money in 2026. Because that was my concern, is we make this step forward and we all agree and it passes. Will I see that increased revenue in time to keep our doors open, or would I have to then ask for a presentation for an appropriation of funds from the county's general fund to keep it
That's my
going?
next question.
I will tell you that it is in my belief, because I don't have my crystal ball, but I believe it's going to be very, very close, gentlemen.
And if you were just estimating, I know this is sort of guessing, but I'm thinking you thought about it, what would that amount perhaps be? What range? If you had to ask.
That I have not gotten an answer on yet. Well, actually, I do. I apologize. Can you bring up that formula table for me? Thank you. So this is an example. This is the table that my associates built for me. So if we ask for a 0.5, now several months ago, I was before you and said that a 0.2 would do it. What scares me is at that time, a 0.2 would have been sufficient. But now, looking in hindsight, what has happened in the last 12 months, that 0.2 would have been used immediately just to break even. Same as what we discussed if we raised the surcharge amount. So just for an example, if we did a 0.5, the table below shows what it would cost the homeowner. And then at the bottom, with our taxable value, it would break out to 1.1 million, a little over 1.1 million of revenue. Now, from that, anticipate keeping 280 to 300,000 to maintain your current budget with no increases or no increased operations, no increased improvements. That would be just balanced. So that leaves you with approximately probably 750, 800,000 that we now have to, we still are going into contract negotiations this year. I need to look at staffing, and I need to come up with an answer for communications for the county. And a great example is yesterday, Unionville had a large fire up in the Fish Point area. And we called in, I believe it was Akron, Fairgrove, Gagetown, and the DNR. And there was talk that had the storm front not been so close, we would have been utilizing both Michigan State Police and DNR resources to airlift water to the affected areas. The problem is when you have a situation like that, we can't communicate. The DNR can't communicate with us on emergency channels, and Michigan State Police can't communicate, their aviation units cannot communicate with us. And then obviously we know about the Coast Guard. We've had regular interactions with them. We did have a boat sink this weekend off the coast of Ponca Sea. So these things that we thought never happened here, they're here daily. So that's just an idea of what a 0.5 millage would look like and what revenue it would bring in.
Was that your question?
Not exactly.
Oh, I thought you were asking how much it would bring in.
I was gonna say, that doesn't sound like the question that was
That's
asked.
interesting.
I thought you were asking how much the revenue would be.
No, I appreciate that because that's important. It wasn't exactly the question. I was getting to the point where that revenue projected would be in addition to the surcharge.
Correct.
Correct. Which in your mind, in your projections, would be sufficient to cover, I mean, we're hearing about the radios, cover that expense and future expenses that we may not be aware of, but you are aware. Is that true?
Yes.
So my concern is the fact that the question was how much, going back to the last question and previous, what do you think the amount would be if you fell short? Because you said that the revenue, if it was put to the public, the earliest you could get it would be January of 26, right?
The fall of 26.
The fall. That's what I wanted to get back to, because that is impossible.
Well, I guess unless I misinterpreted the email that I received from Ms. Daniels, the 25 winter taxes, that assessment would be on.
So
So you would receive it
okay,
in early 26.
early 26. So what is it? There's this gap that keeps
Yes.
moving back and forth like an accordion. And at
Yes.
some point, the concern I think that the board may be sensing is because we really don't know where you're at. And if it comes up to the end where the transfers are going to look more than your revenue, and this is where you come in your estimation, you're going to come back to the board, as you said, and ask for funding.
Correct.
Well, I was trying to get a sense of what range of funding were you thinking that might be? Would it be a
Unfortunately,
quarter, or would it be, and then would it come back out of from the board's perspective, would it be repaid out of the millage? Because of a whole set of circumstances on the board, I'm looking here on the left, that was projected by the previous administration that could come into play, but really don't sense it. And I know we've talked about it, but what do you think that amount would be?
honestly, I don't have an answer for you.
More than 100,
I believe so.
less than 1 million,
I hope so.
somewhere in there. Okay.
We narrowed it down now.
Well, on another, the need is there for the looks of the projections, obviously, financially, unless there's something that we're all missing here. We're spending more than we're taking. We know the reason of that with the surcharges and what's happening with the phone industry. On the other hand, on the other side of this, looking at, I just opened this up and looked at it. Why did you go from 23 to 24, 22 to 24 and not include 23?
There should be a note on there. In 2023 is when we changed CAD systems from Central Square to Clemens.
It's on the back page.
Okay. And so for that reason, 2023's numbers are not complete. They're inaccurate. They would be not fully collected because we only had about 9 months on one CAD and 3 on the other.
So are these percent increases that change are they inflated?
They are not inflated, and that's why I took a percentage increase from 2022 compared to 2024.
So if you had 23 in there, what would you expect that response to be?
It would be much lower because again, we don't have nearly the complete pie, if you will, to work with for statistics.
Because these are substantial percentage
They are.
increases. If you look down at suicide, it's 103%. That's mental health.
Absolutely.
I mean, I sit on the
Absolutely.
board, and this would be something that they'd be very interested in, if they're not already, sensing this. But
Yes.
just looking at across, this is compelling in many respects, but is it misleading?
No, I can tell you for a fact, we are handling more juvenile suicidal subjects than we ever have. It is not uncommon to receive a call for a suicidal 10-year-old. Now, parents want to downplay this sometimes, but as an administrator and a public safety servant, I see that and it just totally shatters my heart. Number one, what 10-year-old? My son is going on 10. What 10-year-old? Think about yourselves. At what 10-year-old, what could possibly be going on in their lives that they're even openly discussing ending their own? And we've already seen successful juvenile suicides here in the county this year. Last year, I've investigated them. I've been on scene of them. And it's a disturbing trend that we should all be looking at.
Well, that's an interesting subject, and first thing comes to mind is bullying, and I'm not going to say any stats, but moving up, animal complaints are up. Not quite sure why. Assaults are up. Is that because we can't respond quick enough? I don't know. D&Es look like it's a pretty easy thing to do in this county, at least with the increase. But anyway, I think these are compelling, but I wasn't sure if they were actually representative to some degree of what's happening, because you tie that into the number of contacts you had, you said earlier, it's almost just short of 1 per population,
Yes.
which is tremendous. It increased 10,000 from the previous year, if that is correct.
Yes. And again, the numbers, here's where if you wanted to skew numbers, this is how you could skew it. Those numbers are what were reported to 911. Now, when the officers get on scene, it may be something different, but those numbers are what is reported to 911 at the time of the call.
And just going to the lowest increase, which is CSC, which seemed to be a problem for years here.
It is still a problem.
It's really not representative of 30%, is it?
I guess the most optimistic way you could say it, sir, would be it is a consistent problem.
Okay. Chairman, I don't think I have any further questions other than it appears that there's going to be a funding shortfall, a possibility of the county may be requested to supply some interim funds unless something else is missing. Which the county may not know.
You said that. Anything you want?
No, I mean, there's,
I guess the discussion is, if the board is in, conjunction to maybe the village is the way to go, we need to talk about special village costs of that would, if that's something that you want to do, or you want to do the 26, let them discuss it, that we have. Discussion between one and there. We have time, August 12th, and since it hasn't done, want to go this year.
Chairman. What's, if we put it on the November election, is there an added cost to put it on there since it's election's already scheduled?
We are in, what's considered an off election year. So there,
25.
in 25 is an off election year. So this would be considered a special election. And so I do have some costs already built into the election budget. I always do that because you never know
Right.
when we may need to put one on. So some of those costs have already been built into the budget. I'd have to refresh where we're at with that, but that would be paid for by the county.
John, do you have a plan B if this thing doesn't, would not have to, is there a plan B there?
I believe our plan B would be to start working with the next closest county to facilitate the transfer of of business. What we could do is go down to not 24-hour service. There are some counties in the state that, they just do business hours, 8 to 5 or something similar. The risk you take with that is you'll lose your state funding, which is approximately, I think, 80,000 a year. So then you're looking at staff reductions and layoffs, or a difficult road that I don't want to imagine.
Gemma, this is an opportunity cost and clerk setting, and you had mentioned you had built these costs in. We had this opportunity previous election to add this on. I'd like to know at some point, what is that additional cost to the county? What would it be that we could have forgone if we would have done this earlier? Just got hypothetical thinking.
$60,000 to $70,000 would have not be expended had we placed this on in 24.
And that includes all the clerks, paying the clerks, and all the funding that goes, all that hidden funding. It seems like it.
It would be close. It would be close. I'm kind of, we always said 50 to 60 with early voting now. Because we would on a special election offer 3 days of early voting. So we have to add in those costs. So that's why I'm going to bump it up to 60 to 70, maybe 75. Had we been on in November or August of 2024, because those are mandatory elections. We're already paying for them.
Right.
So this would be an additional for waiting.
And I don't know if it was asked, I don't think it was. Are there any other requests for an election, or is this the only one you see so far or considered so far?
So we are projecting that we may have language placed on for Vassar City for November, and there's a possibility for Mayville Schools for November. But that will not negate county costs. It will negate and lower costs for those two entities, because then they would be, they're the lower of the hierarchy, and so the higher person pays. So they would be only attributed for any additional cost. And the only one that would be the school. Vassar City would not have any additional cost for theirs, because they're in one school district, one jurisdiction, where the school has to split. And so we have to create a separate ballot just for those Mayville school voters. So that's the only school that I've heard of currently.
All right, well, that's
It's very
sufficient.
possible that we have another one out there. I just have not heard anything more concrete that I can publicly speak on.
So, could you say we got some of this cost already budgeted?
I did not look at that
Okay.
prior to this
Well, that's-
morning's
yeah.
meeting. So some of it, I always build when I look at my election budget, because there's the potential of holding up to 3 elections in 2025. So there are 3 possible election dates, which one is in May, which we had our 2 schools on. One in it is this August, which we've passed that filing deadline. And we had no matter, so we do not have an August election, and then we have the November election. Your next opportunity for elections would not be until 2026, which you would have May, August, November again. May is not a mandatory election. There's nothing like statewide predetermined on there. August and November, we will definitely be having next year, because it's a midterm year. So we have your state level offices, we have school boards, we have villages. Those matters will automatically be there. But when I look at that budget, I always anticipate that we would have a countywide and that we would have potentially 2 small elections to try and budget for that. I would just have to look back, and I could get you that information on Thursday.
So Chairman, we want to bring this back Thursday, could you do that?
We'll bring back some more discussion and,
I'll verify I'll put my election budget and look at that a little bit closer. I don't want to shoot from, I can look it up
Right, yeah,
online. I don't
right.
want to shoot from the
Right.
hip on that, because I think it's too much and we need to factor in some of the early voting costs. So I'll work with that this week, and then I'll have it for you Thursday.
Chairman, I was asking a question. So are you thinking about both, like for the state, each phone and millage, or are you just thinking one? Or how do you want to work that?
I would like to proceed with a millage only.
Okay,
And the reason is I know the situation that our citizens are. I can appreciate it. And I think asking for both to be increased or imposed is too much. Could I go with just the phones? Unfortunately, that won't help.
I was gonna say, that's not gonna bail you out.
It's not gonna bail me out. So, you know, it's not I take these requests heavily, you know, I know what I'm asking. But unfortunately, that's the situation that we found ourselves in.
Thank you.
It
Chairman.
would help, but it wouldn't.
Yeah, it's not gonna bail him out of the problem.
Yeah, right.
We'd be the Dutch boy with our thumb in the dam.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, is there any information you would like to see on Thursday that wasn't presented today that you need?
Chairman, I request,
Yeah.
I'd like a little more information and your thoughts on the millage and how it would be a remedy to the situation you're in, especially with the surcharge, and how it would cover the projected costs of the future.
Okay.
At a minimum.
Okay.
If that's the pleasure of the board. I do want to, if I may take, listen, I'm speaking. When we're talking about additional costs, I'm just going to refer back to a document that was presented to this board earlier. A property, and maybe Angie can correct this. The funding we have is fixed. Okay. It was presented a property tax increase for this year, only increased to 452,000, under 500,000. And Angie, if you're listening, I'm sure this came from you at one point. State revenue was 156,000. Okay. That's not a lot. And there's earning on investments, and there's a wind energy drop in revenue was projected at 55,000. So as we move forward looking to spend money, and not in terms of millage, that'd be the 11th millage if that went through.
I believe so.
This is what, from the public standpoint, it's fixed. And you just mentioned that, which just brought to my mind, it was 500,000, well, under 500,000 in property tax, which is, we're robbing the barrel. In terms of the piggy bank, we're taking it out. And that's why I was concerned about what is this gap funding? And how could we avoid that? So I just wanted to bring that up to the board as a reminder that was given to us earlier this year.
I can say I've been invited to speak about our alerting software, Code Red. And I've attended the Lions Club in Mayville. I've attended Millington Township, Millington Village, Cass City Village. I've got a thing up in Unionville coming up. I'm being asked to come out and present this stuff. And inevitably, they ask me additional questions. And part of the reason of that pamphlet, to be honest, is to answer some of those questions that I've already received. It's kind of a living document, the pamphlet that I've handed you. It changes kind of upon the weight of the questions that citizens ask. And one of the things that has been very routine question you can count on, well, where do you get your money? And so, you know, that's why I included some of the things that I did in the annual report. 911 is not a talked about discussion. People don't know how it's ran. How are we, you know, how do we do business? Local fire boards and EMS boards are asking, well, who made this policy? Well, honestly, it's a whole group of directors and leaders that incorporates policy for everyone in certain situations. So, you know, have found it very engaging to speak with citizens of Tuscola County about 911. And I have received amazing feedback, not only about the work that my team does, but, you know, just they were never aware of how 911 was funded or what would happen if we didn't have funding. So it's been a good discussion, I think, that I certainly don't stray away from. So I thank you for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Okay. Let's move on to number 4, the sheriff and undersheriff wage comparison discussion. Robert Back is here on the sheriff.
Morning.
Morning.
Morning, Robert. Morning.
Thanks, sir.
Before you, a couple years ago, about wage disparity that was growing between my salary and the road patrol lieutenants, or actually lieutenants. Back in 2018, when I started, my wage was about 12% above the lieutenants. Now I'm basing that off of his base and his college incentive. This year, I'm actually below by 0.17%. So essentially, I'm here to request that my wage be restored close to what it was back in 2018, the differential. I will tell you that I've checked with all of our surrounding counties. All of them have the built-in mechanism to show that the undersheriff's position is so much percentage above the commanders below them. Huron, it was the lowest, but Sanilac was 15%. Bay County was 30%, and Lapeer County was 15% above lieutenant's wages. So what I'm asking is actually for 7%. That percentage would come out of the road patrol fund and not the general fund. And I would also like to see that tie bar going forward, that the unfair's wage tie bar with the road patrol lieutenants to stay at 7%. And then it would also affect the sheriff's wage with my wage, and that would be at 15%.
So you want, so you want to get 7% above lieutenants. Okay. And Sheriff, you want to be 15% above
Well,
undersheriff?
So in speaking with Shelley and Erica and everybody so far, I had agreed that for this year, I could just leave mine alone. I realize I'm newly elected. I would just leave me be until January. And then currently it's close to 15% difference. I'd be willing to drop that down to 10% difference. Just to try to save some money. But I think the biggest thing for today is, in moving forward is undersheriff, he supervises the lieutenant, and we're at a point now where it's lopsided. We're just trying to get it back to kind of what the industry does across the board. You shouldn't have supervisors making less than subordinates.
Shelley, you got anything? I know that because I know that we went over figures and their question. I know the incentive fund was talked about, that's the incentive fund for the education or.
Oh, the education.
Yeah.
The educational credit, under sheriff, we did not take it in consideration. We
I know.
took in the longevity.
Right.
And that puts you, as Sheriff and I spoke, just 1% greater than the lieutenant, so.
Right. And I was using the college incentive that he receives, but essentially we both have the same degree. We both went to the same college at the same time. So I threw that in the mix just to justify my numbers.
So, first time we've seen this at the board, at least I believe so. What are the dollar figures you're actually asking for? Is that somewhere with plans?
7% is roughly, you don't have it there, but roughly it's about $5,000.
7% equals about 5,000.
That's what we do have that number there.
So it'd be the 8580. It says US wage. That's why I wasn't clear.
Other sheriff's wage, yeah.
Yeah. Spell these things out. All right, other sheriff. So so it's about a 5,000 increase,
Is what I'm requesting.
and that would solve the situation.
Yes.
Okay. Jim, we have other requests from Commissioner Cook and I, Commissioner Cook, and I had several discussions related to the clerk and the treasurer and their requests from a long time ago and the most recent. And with that request, I know that Commissioner Cook was very, very interested in meeting it really, and I understood it. I felt terrible, but I said, we don't even know our financial position to this day. I'm not sure if we still do, but we'll find out. So I want to give you recognition, Commissioner, because you definitely, because I know you mentioned it, I want to see it a year ago, but probably. And then it came back to life. And so it's not the only one that should be reviewed and recognized, because these two individuals as well, as this particular situation has been before this board previously. Has it not?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I recall.
About 3 years ago, maybe.
So with that said, it's something that, I mean, I just wanted the board to realize, that reflect on, it's more than just
Right.
this particular request. There's this other request too that we need to consider if we're going to move forward with anything. And then you have to consider where the funds are coming from, and that's going to have to come from.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry.
If I may, of course, if you go to the, the other one that had requests, that's why I'm scheduled by tie bar, because the deputies are tie bar to the elected. So you're talking about the treasurers and all the other people, if they get ready, you also gotta look, say, hey, we do this, the deputies.
Oh, yeah.
automatically jump in too. So we just have to, I understand what you're saying. We don't want to get back in this situation. That's where you get in some muddy water when you start talking tie bar. You don't know if you want tie bar or have this discussion if it happens, or, that's something that you can discuss. But
Mr. Chair,
yeah,
can they use the road patrol for these increases?
Yes,
yes, yeah.
No question.
no question.
Okay.
So what you just stated is that, which wasn't stated earlier, which would have been helpful, is that the funding is there. It would just come out of the road patrol.
Right. Yeah, he said that.
He said that.
Well, I didn't capture that.
Yeah,
Since
I just wanted to clarify it. I wasn't questioning. I don't know.
Well, how much of funding is there available in that road patrol for this type of activity?
Well, we currently carry a fund balance that's
Um,
substantial. I don't have a
Over 2 million, isn't it?
rough, yeah.
The
Right,
last figure I remember.
right now, I think both the sheriff and the sheriff,
Correct.
50% general fund and 50% road patrol paid. So they can change that figure to say 55, 45 or whatever. Relative to
And it was different in years past, years.
they can do that.
It was actually flopped the other direction.
Correct.
and Chairman, why wasn't this done previously if it was if the funding was available?
I don't know. I don't know.
You
That's
make
why
the
I'm asking,
decisions.
where's the funding?
The board makes the decisions.
It just doesn't make a lot of sense. The other side of this coin, and I'll just relate this, is the fact that those with millages have a significant advantage of these type of situations versus those who do not, which are other county employees. Which, not to say that's right, wrong, or indifferent, but that has come up in the past in some sense.
Right,
Maybe
yeah, I know
that
what
was
you're
one
saying.
of the reasons, I don't know.
Mr. Chairman? I think that, you got to get that percentage difference between a lieutenant and an undersheriff. I mean, he's over the top of the lieutenant. He should make more money. He's, as he spoke, I think that's just what we could be doing.
Well, Commissioner, I don't think anyone's going to argue against it, especially since it's funded and it's been here 3 years ago. And I just asked the question, why wasn't it done before? We wouldn't be in this situation. And as Bob sort of look at us like, you make the decision.
And with the sheriff saying he's gonna just do 10%, I mean, you know, he's given up and, you know, Bob works hard over there. He does a good job.
Well, then, Chairman, I would suggest move that to Thursday.
Okay. Yeah, may not be an idea, but we'll move it to Thursday and give everybody a chance to, let's, in the next couple of days to digest this, digest everything we talked about, but, you know,
So do we put that in the motion or do we just talk about it more or what are we doing?
I think we move it to Thursday and if we need a motion at that point.
I would have a motion prepared,
Yeah, I
especially
would
with the specifics. I don't want Bill and the sheriff, Bob and the sheriff to come in again
Yeah,
and say, this is the third time around.
Right.
You guys made the decision. You're more than a minus what, $145 or 17% or whatever. So that we can do.
they have the right figures for everybody knows exactly what it is, but.
Correct.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree too.
I appreciate your consideration.
If one of you do not want your handout, I need one for the packet, more copies and extra. You need it.
Nope, I'm good.
You can say, I need a copy of it.
No, I'm good. I look at it. That's good.
Thank you.
Yep.
We're ready to move on to number 5, I think. Marine Patrol grants and summer patrols around Robinson Sheriff and that's it.
So traditionally, our Marine Patrol program is paid for out of federal grant money. Our budget was built based on what we were kind of expected to receive. The budget is right around 20,000 and we were expecting to receive kind of close to that. It's just a few $100 difference here or there. Usually by this time of year, we would have received our award letter essentially indicating how much money we were going to get. Usually by this time of year, we would have had at least 3 weekends of Marine funding. If we consider this past weekend, probably 4 weekends. We haven't been patrolling because we received word. Well, first off, we didn't get that letter telling us that we had the money, so we held off. But then on, I believe, May 30th, we all received emails indicating that the federal funding was being held. There's some things going on as it pertains to sanctuaries and whatnot that our Attorney General has filed suit along with others. And there's no Marine Patrol funding anywhere in the state of Michigan federally this year. So they hurried up, scrambled, told us we were eligible potentially for state grant that would require a 25% match. They gave us a deadline until the 6th. So last week when we were talking about this, we were right at deadline time. We did put in for that grant. But again, that will require a 25% match from the county.
Did you say did or did not?
We did. Yes, we put in for that, but we don't know when that's going to be approved, how much that's going to be. You know, if we're looking at the numbers, if it's comparable, you know, our match might be somewhere around $4,000, but we really don't know. And so we've kind of been postponing patrolling. We're not pulling the boat out of the water or anything. We need to have that for emergencies. But it's just trying to inform the board what's going on across the state right now. You know, come fourth quarter, we might have to ask for a budget amendment because we're not in a situation that we typically find ourselves in. So, and he was following this when I was at the MSA conference. So he might have a little bit more information that I didn't present.
So what do you gotta have, Sheriff, to get the boat in the water?
Boat's in the water.
I mean, to have it patrolling.
Well, essentially, how we do it on a yearly basis is we have it built into the budget, what we plan on spending, and then we receive those grant funds. We run throughout the year and then pay back those grant funds. Well, we got the late notice that the federal grant was being withheld, and now the state grant, they say maybe the end of June they'll let us know, but we don't know when they're going to give an answer. Plus, there's more people potentially drawing out of those state funds this year because the feds have given nothing to any of the counties. So we don't know if they're going to give significantly less money or if it's going to be similar to what they would normally give. So we really don't know what the amount of funding we will receive will be. We're hoping it'll be similar to what we get on a yearly basis, but we would need a 25% match from the county.
The budget was approved already, but we've just been hesitant to go out and do those patrols, not knowing what's gonna be coming in. So,
Chairman?
Yeah.
What's the likelihood that the state would deny the grant?
I'm pretty confident we will get the grant funding, but again, we're not confident on how much money we will receive or when they will approve that. Because generally it would be the last week of May when we would get that grant funding letter saying you would receive this much for the year. We just found out the feds weren't doing that and we had to scramble to apply for the state funding. So they are saying tentatively the end of June, but you know how government works. It may not be. My fear is if we don't do anything as far as patrols now, because we've done nothing because we have zero money, that we'll be 3/4 of the way through the voting season by the time we get the official word that we have money, and then we'll be able to patrol at that point. But like Director Ramirez said, there was a boat that sunk in Bay County, just outside of our county. Generally, we would have had a boat on the water, could have responded to that. We've had zero patrols. I put the boat in the water, took it on a test drive, took it on a second test drive last week. We've had zero patrols out there. And Bay County, same boat. They have no funding, so they haven't been patrolling. They've been responding to emergencies. The Coast Guard under the Saginaw River is not 24 hours a day. They're now Monday through Friday, normal business hours, so they're not patrolling on the weekends. The DNR, you don't know where they're gonna be because they could work on the land, they could work on the water. So essentially, our county has no coverage. Huron County has a little different situation because they do get grant funding, but their county kicks in a lot of money. So they've been doing their patrols out of their own money without having that grant funding.
So Chairman, the best case scenario, grant comes in at the end of June and the board contributes $5,000.
Right.
Worst case scenario, there's no grant and the board will end up contributing, I think it's what, 19,000.
That is the worst case scenario. We could make adjustments as time goes on. What I'm requesting is to be able to start patrols potentially next weekend. I would generally run every Saturday, Sunday. Sometimes I would throw Friday on there or sometimes a midweek. But if that grant funding gets denied or not approved, say in June or July, we could make adjustments at that point and significantly cut down patrols or not have any at that point. And hopefully the cost of the county would still only be that $5,000 give or take.
Yeah, new boat.
I just don't want to put, yes, we have a 1-year-old boat that's sitting in the water unused. So I don't want to start patrols without your guys' approval because I don't want to essentially not be able to reimburse that funding without your guys' approval.
And Chairman, so in terms of the funding, it'd be unwise not to put the boat in the water. Like it's in the water, but not to use it. We're going to be in a deficit position until we get some grant funding or we pay any money. And this is yet coming up, I suppose, in financial, unless the commissioners know of another revenue source, any money that's used for expense has to come out of the GSP. What's remaining in there. Is that not correct?
I would think so. GSP,
That's
Government
correct.
Services.
Used to be the ARPA.
Government Services Fund.
Which is the old ARPA money, which
Right.
was projected at one point. I mean,
Yeah, in fact, we touched on it again last couple.
and I reviewed that
Yeah.
tape, but the deficit for this year is taken out of GSP an exact amount. Okay, so it was projected to be 1.8. That was the beginning balance, and I heard it was 1.9 or 2 or something on that tape. And with 650,000 projected to be taken out of it, which I don't know, it's down to $1.2 million. So the remaining funds the county has to spend unrestricted is $1.2 million.
I thought
Just keep that in mind.
yeah, I thought the 6 that we've already taken out of that figure.
It's estimated transfer out, which happens near the end of the year, once you get everything,
Right.
that's modified. which is the real problem. And you add to that over budgeted, which we'll be talking about that later today, and you add to that overtime, which is comp time. That adjustment takes place at the end of the year as well. So the best hope I have as finance at the moment is that it's in the 650. Because if it is more than that, we have this projection of becoming more real and real. Nothing to do with what you're doing in terms of county finances. It's just, and plus we had union negotiations, which are no, that will come out of this. Unless budgeted well. No further comment.
And I guess I should probably also bring up there already have been a few green expenditures for the year because when I hire somebody, I can run them a year as a boat tender. Basically, they're not able to operate the boat, not able to do several things. They're an assistant. I already sent somebody to the Marine Academy, which is in the end of April, so I had to do that in advance, expecting I was going to receive the federal funding because that's how I've always done it in the past. Because our federal funds end October 1st. We have to have everything spent by then. So essentially we have no money from October 1st until June 1st. So there's already been some expenditures from that. And then we have boat storage we have to pay for because the county does not have any facilities where we can put the marine boats.
This also pertains to the guys that go like Murphy Lake and stuff like that,
Correct.
too, right? That's all part of
Yes.
that program, too, right?
Yes.
I think the boat needs to be more.
Absolutely.
And working, not just, yeah, sure, but yeah, and working.
We always run in the red on that every year. We shore it up at the end of the year. I say we'll just see where it goes. I mean, we see what kind of funding we get, but you got a boat sitting out there and we're responsible for 17 miles of coastline. I think we need to be patrolling that water.
I agree.
And we can report back to you once that funding approval takes place or denial or whatever it is, just to let you know what our projection is then from there on out.
Okay, then look at it. So move to Thursday.
Yeah.
Motion, yes.
Deficit spending unless we get a grant.
Correct.
Okay,
Just a question, Chairman.
Yeah.
When you're running the boat for 17 miles of shore, unless you get a assist call, do you stay within the 17 typically or until?
Yes,
somebody
they
calls you?
only patrol the areas of Tuscola County unless there's an emergency call elsewhere, which they will respond to. But I would say 99% of the time they're in the water at Tuscola County, either Saginaw Bay or the small lakes that we have.
The small, and then how far do you reach out on that 17 miles? How far is it?
Well, I mean, there's an imaginary line out there where it's, I don't know the exact amount of miles, but I would have to say at least 15 or more miles.
You're
which-
okay.
Because then we would share with, Tawas, or Iosco County, whatever, splits it up. Same, Huron County has the same thing with the island they have over there. Just a portion of that is in Huron County, the rest is in Iosco. It's
Okay.
several miles.
Yeah. Thank you.
okay, more questions? Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thursday. Number 6. Use of, the courthouse law by, Del Park.
Commissioners, I did give you the email request and Deb is requesting to use the courthouse lawn on June 14th. So I'm just looking for a consent agenda item for that, please.
Chairman, I just have a comment. I think this was very unprofessional for a request. I've never witnessed anything like this in a request. It has nothing to do with the party that's making it, but when someone says something that we will be in our best behavior, if someone flips us the bird, we will wave with, we'll be, I'm reading it verbatim, we'll be say, have a good day. I think that from a request standpoint, could have been much more professional. It was a very poorly written letter. If it represents a party, whatever party it would be, I'm surprised that they don't reread what they wrote because there's grammatical errors. And I don't know if anybody else has a problem with that, but I do.
I did check my emails, but I didn't see it.
I do the way it was written. I've never seen anything like that for a request for the courthouse lawn in those types of words.
I'm with you, Commissioner Bardwell. I think they could have left some of that out of there.
That's my problem. If they want to rewrite that, then submit it. That'd be sufficient for me. But for the rest of the board, I would really have a hard time approving that as submitted.
So your recommendation is, rewrite the request and put it on for Thursday instead of.
That would be fine if it was more professionally submitted, especially flipping the bird.
I can request that, Chair.
Would you? You think it's proper? Have you ever had this request before?
The requests don't normally come through me. This was reached out to me. I reached out to Chairman Vaughn and he requested that it be put in writing. And so I then provided that. I know that in the past, we don't normally deny the use of that courthouse lawn, and I think they were just trying to give notice where notice was needed.
I think it's a little flippant, and for a professional organization who's addressing a professional organization, I thought it would lack a lot of professionalism. Other than that, maybe that's just longevity and grammar and good leaders. Anyway,
Well, I'll put it on the consent agenda for.
If they rewrite it, if they rewrite
If we
the request,
make it a separate,
Yeah.
so we have it.
You can put it out for Thursday and I'll request a new letter.
That takes it out to the new business. Do I move into the old business and I want to take a break? 10 minutes before we do that.
I'm good with
And
that.
with that, I'm going for it.
Okay, that takes through new business. We're gonna take a 10-minute recess and then we'll move right into old business. Welcome back. We're back from a little recess there and we'll continue on with the committee of the whole meeting this morning. And we'll move on into old business. This is tech cyber preparedness with Ian Lee, Chief Information Officer.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have returned from Texas. You guys approved my out-of-state travel to attend this program through Texas A&M Engineering Extension Service. I knew very little about this program or this organization going into this, but I definitely walked into the major leagues of cybersecurity preparedness. Texas A&M Engineering Extension Service, I relate to much like our Michigan State University Extension. They're the little brother of Texas University, but much like being a little brother, they're the much smarter.
Everybody's little brother.
And, I mean, we're not as good at sports as the older brother, but we're definitely smarter than that. So Texas A&M Engineering TEEX has partnered with Department of Homeland Security and FEMA to receive some significant federal funding for training on disaster scenarios, not just exclusive to cybersecurity, but all types of disaster scenarios. And something I'm going to be showing you here is kind of the program. They have a whole city named Disaster City that they have set up and have different scenarios on each block of how to respond and train people in these disasters. So every morning started at 7 a.m. At the hotel, they pick us up in these shuttles. There was 4 black Mercedes shuttles that would pick us up, and there was 31 of us total. And they'd scoot us off into Disaster City. It was kind of cool. We'd leave in this convoy of these black Mercedes. And I was like, ooh, this feels really important. And you pull into Disaster City and you see things like this is from the window of my shuttle, of these overturned subway cars that have come up or derailed. And they are actively training people how to remediate these situations. There's another rail car that I took from the window. This isn't the exact scenario, but this did exist, and I did watch these firefighters putting out an oil refinery down there, and being trained on how to combat that. But one of these blocks, here's the whole map of Disaster City, and you can come in this way, and you come all the way down here. This Emergency Operations Training Center is specifically built for cybersecurity response to a ransomware event, an attack. They've taken down your local government organization. We have people from all over the country, from Alaska, Juneau, Alaska. There was an attendee there, California, Florida, quite a bit from Michigan in this specific class, attending this disaster. That's what I got the map. But in there, what we talked about is we have a cyber incident response plan. We adopted this in 2017. We revise it every year. It's going to be due to be revised coming up. But in here, it's just definitions of what we're going to do when this happens. And we have these organization units set up. But what does this all mean? Who actually does what? And that's what they're training us on, is who is assigned to these different organizational units, and who's going to be responsible for what, who tells who what to do. So that's what we practiced in this whole thing. This is the example of this is the room. And I want you to kind of take note of how eerily similar this is set up to the building that we have across the street, where this is the main floor, and we're looking down on the main floor from, they call this the SIM cell up here. And they're looking down, reviewing everything that's going on in the event of not a natural disaster, a cybersecurity event. Each one of these tables along the side indicates or represents a division of this city. So like this was the water department, this was the Department of Transportation, the police were over here, the hospital was on another one. And each day they assigned us, you had to be in a different unit every day, and a different role every day inside that unit of what you were going to be responsible for. So in attending this, they taught me to think differently. that when I worked for the Department of Transportation and our webpage got hacked and took down the traffic lights. My initial reaction to that and how to prepare for this was I'm going in and trying to fix the thing. We already have a team to fix that. You've defined that. You're on the communications team. You need to inform the city administration and the Department of Emergency Operations of what is going on and what is affected. So my role in that is not to fix the traffic lights, which I would normally jump and do and did jump and do and got, no, that isn't your job. Your job is to fix this part, not fix the computers. So they taught me to think differently and be prepared for something like that, to actually fill out and populate this model that we have already determined and assign roles. So that was the gist of the whole thing. I tried to keep this short, but it was 3 days of that. Worked for the Department of Transportation, Water, and the police being the final day, and they just created havoc. They can look down on you and they can monitor you. They have microphones down there and they can listen to and watch everything that you're doing. And the exercise takes like 4 hours throughout the day. And if you're going too fast and you get things done too fast, they'll start to mess with you. And so we were getting it done too quick. And all of a sudden they were still on the network and they changed all their passwords on us as we were live inside this exercise. And we're supposed to, it's not working. They're still in the system. So then it was really unique. I'd like to bring some sort of this training to our local region. Like I said, this was set up kind of like how we have the offices upstairs next door, looking down on the main training floor. The forethought and preparedness from the leaders that put this building together, not just myself, not just the people in this room, but the people in this community that saw this and thought of this before I even went to this and knew this. The training ability we have here available to us is quite similar to this. So I talked with these guys. I said, I'm interested in bringing your program something similar. If you guys have some sort of federal training dollars, is it available for me to throw a training up here for our local region? We're landlocked to do a location geographically, where to learn anything like this, I'm traveling to Texas or possibly Detroit, Grand Rapids, anybody that puts anything on. Why can't we do something like this to prepare our local schools, hospitals, government organizations, whether it's village, township, city, run something like this? And they said, absolutely, we can come up there. All we need is 35 people committed. And you submit and we'll come up and run this program up there. And I got really excited about it. So I have some motivation going into this. I also have to take care of projects at home too. So I would like to schedule some sort of regionalized training for all of our local cities, townships, villages, schools, hospitals, anybody that's nonprofit. Come in and use our facility to attend this for totally free. Any questions? Okay.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, and I'm very excited about it, very motivated. Thank you for allowing me to travel and learn this and bring this back to the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I was that excited, so. But 2 years I'm playing at the golf course. So. All right, move on to number 2, financial review update, the question from May 29th, 2025, Erica Dibble.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm just getting to it. I apologize for the length of the report, but I did not want to provide you with partial and then have questions on the items that were missed. So I provided you again with the same reports I did last week, only up to date again as of June 5th. So we are still in open audit. We are hoping to finalize that this week. There's a few loose ends that we're tying up with them. And then we can bring that to the board for final review before submitting it to the state. The only thing I have specifically was, I know Clerk Betty had a question in public comment, but I wasn't out here to respond. So the 678 fund is an internal service fund. So I did include in the packet I just put some screenshots in there. So that is an internal management tool. All of those funds that are in there have been individually hit to whatever department was associated. So this is normal course of business. There is no budget required because these are not actually funds that are coming out of this line item. These funds are coming out of each independent department. And so this is only a management tool for this fund. And again, this is been the way it has been for many years. Did that answer your question?
That explanation did not, but the explanation that you provided, Commissioner Cook did.
Okay, great.
I don't think that, because my question was if that was a report that is showing to the board that that fund is over budgeted, is how it was presented last week. But your answer to Commissioner Cook was it really is not over budgeted. It's just a placeholder. So, but I do believe that there may have been some budgets in there that were over budgeted and should have been presented to the board. So in layman's terms, for the simple person looking at these, I just think that that was somewhat confusing.
Sure.
Because you were providing budgets that you stated were over budgeted, but you're stating that they technically are not. Because the money is in individual accounts, individual line items for each department.
Yes.
You showed it as a whole. And I think that that was confusing because it really isn't over budgeted then.
Correct. So
On paper it is,
on paper.
but it is not physically, and I think that that was misleading.
Sure. So, and this report that I ran, again, was a standard report out of BSNA, and I ran for all funds for you because I did not want to limit the number of funds that I ran for you, which I thought would raise more questions. Why didn't you run it for all funds? 0 to 999. So in the future, if you'd like me to limit those to only certain funds and provide you with that information and exclude the ones that aren't required to have a budget, I'm happy to do that. But again, I wasn't sure what you would prefer. So I provided you with everything for full transparency of every fund out of the system that shows over budget, even though some of them are not required to have a budget. So we can work on what you like presented in the future so that we can be giving you what you're used to and what you'd like to see.
I just think it's important because I do think that there are some, MIDC, their supply budget currently is almost $500, $700 over budget. Well, we're only through June. So that to me is a budget that is truly over. And I think that the commissioners and yourself need to look at that budget.
Correct.
When you're looking at the insurance at $1.1 million, that is not technically over budgeted because it is reflected in each department's individual. And so that is going to wash in the end.
Correct.
That is not a concern for the commissioners or the department heads. So that's how I looked at it as a department head,
Sure.
looking at what was over budget. And I'm going through saying, okay, where's mine?
Right.
And then I see
Something else.
something that's 1.1 and that was alarming to me.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and I appreciate that perspective. I do. So like I said, we can work on what the commissioners would like moving forward. And yes, we do need to address some of these budgets that are over budget, but first they need to finish audit. So once I finish the audit, then the next focus is why are these over budget? Are there amendments that need to be done that have already, for example, the MIDC, maybe they had budgeted to buy a printer, but they ended up not buying a printer and they bought some supplies and it's on the wrong line item. Do they already have funds budgeted in their budget? And I need to work with that department head to see if it's just moving it from line item A to line item B, or are they truly over budget in aggregate? And then we need to make a different adjustment.
Mr. Chair. I don't know if it was necessarily misleading. It was with the explanation, then it was, at least myself, and I think Clerk Fetting as well. With that explanation, it was,
It made
understand-
sense
it made
after,
sense, right.
but I just,
No,
as a
no,
commissioner, if you're looking at that, you
And I'm
really
glad
need to know
you,
what
yeah.
funds are
I was glad you asked that and
Yeah.
I got that answer.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Today, I don't think that it was explained the same way as it was in our email that you explained, so I think you just further explained it so that the general.
Plus
public can hear
it's on here too.
it.
Yes.
On the. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
And I'm still working on the tracker. I have not, solidified that, like, I did find Clayette's previous tracker of the government services. And I am looking through all of the minutes from 2024 to make sure anything that was approved use is on that tracker. So that is on my hot list, but again, audit has been priority one.
More questions?
Sure. I listened to the tape of last meeting. And I
Yes.
noticed it revolved around Neil more than where we should be in terms of financial position. Sorry, Chairman. And I sort of spread it out today. We don't know 6 months in, and you're using we're still under audit, you're getting me concerned, Eric, in the sense, and the board, in the sense that I've never experienced this caveat that we're still waiting for our audit to be finalized. What is in this audit that's going to be so substantial? Usually there's not that many adjustments at all. It's just a confidence level that the previous administration, the previous client, the submissions were proper and correct. But that's always been out in front and printed in front of everything. I'm not sure about that, so I'll set that aside. From a finance perspective, that has me perplexed unless there's some major adjustments, which in that case, this board needs to have a heads up if you know something. The other part of it, I am not a proponent of BSNA reports ad nauseum. The data, it's worthless. At our level, unless there's commissioners on the board who like to read that, at our level, we need synopsis, we need summaries, we need the cliff notes.
Sure.
Whether it would be whatever it may be, because as of today, as requests are still coming in to spend money, we don't know where the money is coming from. And when I look at the over budget report, whether it's Credo or some other analysis, at some point, this is going to have to be reconciled. And right now, we're at 100, and I quoted this morning, coming out of 650 coming out of these GSP funds, which you have said something like 2.2 million. But I'm not exactly sure based on the projects. They have one been completed, but yet projected wise, the last projection that the previous administration gave us was we had 1.8 in it, and we're going to go down to 1.2 based on the shortages we're going to experience this year. I don't know if that's going to be more than 650 or not. Because whatever it is, if it's going to be more, what Colette projected is becoming more and more accurate as we go through. Because we're talking about some severe deficits that this board has never seen before. Any board, Tuscaloosa County. So when we look at what do we need to know, we don't have any cash in our general fund, do we? I mean, we have restricted and we have non-restricted. I don't think there's anything left. It was 400 or 533,000, well, 500,000 beginning of the year. There was nothing contingency. All we had was GSP. And as I said earlier, in terms of what increase in taxes, their revenue sources and the depreciation of the windmills are declining in a sense. So I think the board, 6 months, this is June, and I don't know if this is your role or not as chief accountant. It could be a controller's role. But I believe the board needs a higher level financial overview that would point out the concerns that you or someone else would see that would reflect board action. In other words, do we continue at the pace we're going, or do we start pulling back? Now, as I mentioned this morning, the big open end of this, what we don't know, is union negotiations. In terms of, I don't think there'll be any restraint. That's my thought. So from a financial position, I wouldn't worry about Neil. We've been through Plant Moran. I can't imagine what went on. Even planned, and there's something that she revealed to me, I'm done with it, move on. It's the difference between full or modified accrual, which gives you a more truer picture when it's full, but it was dropped in the midstream, I guess. But yet, from a board's perspective, what are you looking for finance to make decisions on it? Because right now, we're just moving forward, and we heard quite a number of requests, and there's going to be one Thursday related to a search firm. Where's the money coming from? Because once that GSP funds are drawn down, there's nothing left other than reserves. I'm not even sure where we're at on reserves. And this was a question Commissioner Cook challenged fairly frequently. We have too many, too much, not enough, because we will be in reserves. And we had this board, previous boards have been there where they had to make a decision. And that was a very difficult decision to make because you're drawing down about the last thing that you have. I don't think from a board's perspective, unless anybody's really has perspective on this, that we're over budgeted in any department to any great degree in terms of other than, I think it might be decimal desk could be 5,000 to 10,000. I don't know. But for years, we had pared down these budgets to what we thought were reasonable, at least the boards thought they were. So where we're going is completely driven by financial at this point and how we allocate our funds, unless the treasurer is making a lot of interest somewhere. Because that was,
She's working hard. She is working
we
hard.
could use a few million. But related to that, there's my concern. More high-level analysis, more concerns about this is what the direction we're going. And certainly from the well, I'll just use Colette and Mike Hogan, whatever. They had the templates. All right. But just the BSNA report to go through for over budget is laborious for the board.
So when I say that we are in open audit, what I mean is that is my focus. That is where all of my time, most of my time is spent, is getting them what they need, reviewing things, researching things, finding the backup that they're asking for, and then finding was this transaction done accurately or not accurately? And if not, correction. Do I have authority to do the correction? So that's what I mean when I say we are in open audit. That
It
has been my
concerns me,
focus.
Erica, because you're taking a lot of time. I've never witnessed this before.
Well,
But we're
there's
taking a lot of
multiple
time
reasons
when
for
we're
that.
trying to figure out on an ongoing basis live. All right,
Sure.
this is 24 you're looking at. 25 is where we're moving. And every decision this board makes or every thought they make. And Thursday, we have some coming up.
I agree.
Is spending money. There's a concern. Well, what's the priority? What's more important? And I'm perplexed at how much time the audit firm, Castarian, is requiring continuously, because that audit is due,
June 30th.
yes. I mean, which is,
I agree. And part of that issue is it is a new auditing firm. So anytime you get a new auditing firm, they're asking more in-depth questions than they will next year.
is that something this board should be concerned about? Because normally this board would not even be involved in that.
I
Other than a
don't
cursory
think so.
update.
I don't think there's any concern. It's normal course of business. When we had Goodrich, the first year that they came on, again, they asked all these same questions, but then we had them for several years. Anytime you switch to a new auditor, they're doing a deeper dive. They're understanding the
Well,
processes.
we've been there before, and I'll take what you're saying, and that's where you're at, but I'm also saying that the opportunity cost of that is the fact that the board doesn't have a sense, unless one of the commissioners knows exactly close to where we're having cash, and what we have to spend, and especially if we're overspending.
Right.
And the transfer out, so if you play it, discuss more than once to this board, is the real key driver here, because they occur at the end of the year, and they're major, and that's why she scrambled last year. And I'm very concerned. And again, I'm just repeating myself, and I'll move it back to the chair, but with the labor relations coming up, There's 1.2 projected in that fund after what was projected to be transferred out. Hopefully that's, otherwise, given 900,000, 600,000, we're not making any money to replace that. So, back to you, Chair.
The questions for, and I understand what Commissioner Barlow was talking about too, you know. Like when we have these requests, it's nice to come and say, okay, hey, you got this request, this is what we're at, this is what we can do, this is where we got money, if we hire this, if we don't hire, you know what I'm saying? There was just some questions that you heads up on, like, anytime there's a request, you know, everybody should be there to say, okay, I've looked at this request. You know, we need to wait a little bit at that, you know, and they let all the new audit for the requests they're asking, because that's just in that office, what they're, I understand that. And I know you gotta have that done to close out 24. And then you can move to 25, like you should, I understand that too. But what I understand is what, you know, what we need here, for to make these decisions, to do some requests come up here, and we're gonna need guidance on.
Yes.
it.
And, you know, and if some of these things are controller level functions, you know, I'm happy to jump in and help with some projections, but having a controller to do those things would be beneficial, right? So I know that we're working on that. You know, that's been a struggle to find someone. So I know that, that will help as well. And plus, you know, with me being new, I also have to redo or learn all the history. I don't just know it like Clay did. I have to read and research and see what happened in the past, look at the trends.
And I understand all that, but I know what Richard said about what the board to make these decisions. You gotta have your assistants. Let us know, so, well, that's a good decision, or that may be a little tight, or I'll hold off on that, or, you know, or, because there's a decision that comes at us every day.
Of course.
And that's what's concerned, we don't know what we're making. We really look at the other shit, where the money's coming from. But yeah, because we don't know what we're making right ones or bad ones. That's the issue. So, yeah, but, I appreciate it. I know you're doing a great job.
Mr. Chair, just one more comment. And I know the audit is still hanging over our heads, and not that I don't disagree, or I don't disagree with what Commissioner Bardwell said, but I also, as one commissioner, would want the accurate figures when I make my decisions. And I just want to throw that out there because I think the audit is, you know, important. We need to get through it. And so when she comes back to us, we got 1.8 or 1.2 or 1 million. We know that that's accurate.
Well, that's 20, Commissioner, that's 24.
Correct. No, I know that.
And if we have adjustments of magnitude, we've got a problem.
Right.
Severe problem, which is magnitudinal in the sense that you can't wait mid-June to make business decisions and rely on whatever's going to be coming out of this audit. I have not a clue. And it can't be severe because you've not brought anything up that it sounded like it. So it's going to make much of an impact. In my mind, time is being spent with Posterion, which I hope that's not how well billable rate. I think it's just a contract, right? Yeah, okay. That we're foregoing information that this board needs to make decisions. The decisions are coming pretty rapidly. Are they not?
Correct.
I mean, we know where we're at.
I told you I didn't disagree with you, sir.
Oh, yeah, I understand that. It's, when you're in the finance world and you've been there, you're still there, it's hard to spend money, and just as I said, with the sheriff and others,
Because we all know that
it's deficit spending.
there's tough times coming.
Oh, yeah.
And so sometimes the decision's got to be made right now with the request coming in, say, hey, you know, there's stuff that, and they just can't be done, you know, and again, that's where we need, you know, place. That's what you're seeing for the future. Thanks, Eric.
Okay.
Thanks, Erica.
Thank you.
Liaison reports, finance, technology, Mr. Bardwell.
Well, I think we've gone through a lot of finance discussions.
Thanks, brother.
And we didn't disagree with you either.
So, I don't know what to say there, but, I'm gonna turn it back over to, Ian on technology.
He had his time too.
Yeah, just-
Gentlemen, Fields. Building and ground, Commissioner Luke.
I don't have anything unless, Mike. Back to you, sir.
Any word from, City of Carroll about if they're writing up an agreement with, or you haven't heard anything much?
I have not.
You can follow up on that for me. Give me a good chance to just appreciate that. Personnel, Commissioner Goodchild. I mean, he is not a commissioner either. I know I read it on personnel. Okay, anything ongoing personnel, anything on HR side? Website? Any other businesses necessary to come from the board? Public comment?
Good morning,
Good morning.
commissioners. My name is Wendy Friend. I am the community nutrition instructor for, excuse me, MSU Extension. I'm going to be really quick because I know this has gone really long, but I just wanted to update you on a couple programs that we have coming up this summer, especially this one. I'm partnering with the Carroll Farmers Market to do a next gen market. So it is completely youth focused. The entire market will be ran by youth. Paige is going to have somebody following her to be the market manager. I'm going to have kids at an MSU table. The kids can apply to have their own table and be able to sell things. They're also going to be required to take the cottage food law class, just like any adults would. So this is hopefully the first one of many coming. We think that it would be a good step forward for the youth in the area. So that's why we partnered together.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then I have one more program that is coming up at the beginning of next school year that I'm partnering with the transition board for the special needs kids in all of Tuscola County. I'll come back and talk about that at a later date, but we're looking at doing the class in Millington. We just don't have a venue yet, but that'll be coming up in the next school year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Public comment, any more public comment? Anything else there in the technology world there, Mr. Lee? Let the record show the public comment was offered, and we did have one, we appreciate that. Thank you for that, and with that, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Of course, it's been moved by Mr. Lee, supported by Mr. Bardwell. During the committee, the whole meeting this morning, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.